All right, we did our adequate notice, we did our roll call. And I will give a report downstairs.
I thought we were doing majority up here, and
Should I give my report up here?
I thought that's what we did.
That is only your reports.
Pardon?
I think it depends on the reports.
I would rather address the crowd downstairs
Oh, okay.
with the president's report.
No, I know she can do what she wants. What I'm
No,
just
no,
saying
no.
is, I thought we were discussing up here
Yes,
and
you're right.
voting downstairs.
It's just that what I'd like to.
reports usually get done
Downstairs.
Yeah.
The superintendent's report then?
We have a number of kids around.
Right.
We have downstairs.
Right.
I'm choosing to do that.
Recording in progress.
Right, Ms. Truba.
I've no other, I've nothing.
Okay. The minutes, McCarthy, you want to do that downstairs, or we certainly could do it up here?
Well, budget, I mean, we should do most of the discussion just in.
No, I said the minutes.
Minutes, we don't want to get downstairs. It's just a.
No, but anybody have any questions on the minutes?
Does anybody have any questions on the minutes? No? All right, that's all I have, Madam President.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, financial resources, okay.
All right, so we have 5 items for discussion. We're discussing up here, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So.
Does anybody have any questions on the discussion items? John, per the request of the board, we did put staffing versus enrollment trends on there, so if there's any questions. We did put the capital budget back because one of the things that we did wind up doing was we took the vehicle out this go round. You know, with the cuts that we have, we're continuing to make progress since the last time we all met. We're meeting again as a leadership team tomorrow to have further discussions and just to give everybody the leadership.
The four.
Well, no, it's central office and the principals. Yeah, it's leadership. So the governor is going to give his address on February 28th. So that's gonna by the end of the first or the early the second, I'm gonna know the state aid numbers. So I'm hoping by the 7th, I'll have good revenue projections and we'll
I
be
think. at the next
most of the
meeting-
way
I
done.
think the next meeting. We'll have-
Yeah, we'll be most of the way done of where we are with the budget.
We've made some good progress in the last couple of weeks and some retirements in the last week that will help us. So I think by the next meeting.
We'll definitely have what's
You
happening
know,
with
we'll
everything.
let you know what's going
Okay.
on. Regarding the staffing, if I can just say something, the Gal Avenue one that you originally got was what it was incorrect in one of the lines. The teacher one went from 61 last year to 72 this year. That 72 is incorrect. It was a
Typo.
so it actually is supposed to be 61 because the 3 areas down below, gen ed, special ed, PEA, teacher should add up to what the teachers are.
Marianne, could you please zoom in on that by any chance?
So just so you know.
So are
You're
the
comparing blue
pupils
line
per
to blue
teacher
line.
wrong then?
No, it's all fixed. This is
Oh,
updated.
this
This
is
is
updated.
correct.
So this is all updated. Yes, I'm saying what you got original.
We sent out a note with
Right.
Debbie
Yeah.
Amato, so this is.
Just-
gonna-
yeah.
This afternoon.
61 is the correct number
Correct.
for 22,
So
23.
similar to what we said, so where, so have we made cuts? Yeah, so when you kind of look at this on services, like, well, it doesn't look like we made cuts, right? But we have made cuts. But where it's been offset, discussed this last time, you see the increase in the aides that we've had over the 10-year period. And then also with the advent of the preschool, we added teachers to preschool. So you're talking probably about 30 staff members there just for preschool between aides and teachers for the preschool program. So if you take that out, I think then you're able to compare apples to apples. Because we didn't have that, current preschool 10 years ago, right? So even though the overall number is relatively flat from 10 years ago to now, right? Probably about between the aides and preschool, that's where it balances itself out.
I mean, but our pupils per teacher for gen ed and special ed are both down over 10 years, which I found shocking.
Yeah, and if you look at the gen ed,
Well, as I said, our cuts in students, our cuts in staff are not paced the same as the cuts in staff and students.
And I still can't understand how and why that number is relevant. Gen ed pupils per teacher, special ed pupils per teacher. So gen ed, you're saying at Dow 5.88. So you took the total number.
Well,
of
I think, but I think it's can be misleading because there's
Yeah.
special ed teachers who are in ICR settings and so it's not always.
Right, so that number is not really correct. There's
That's
no
the way
way.
the state looks at it.
The state looks at it that there are
absolutely.
5.88
And in our audit,
students per teacher. There's no
Per
teacher.
staff, that's, I'm looking
Yeah.
at the bottom,
Right.
yeah, in the purple or the
There
pink,
are
whatever
very
color
few
that is.
teachers who are working five,
You know,
six,
Right,
six.
that's
We're
the
down.
point. So that number is
it's
deceptive.
confusing. It's-
Yeah.
it's-
Yeah, I
we're
mean,
down
it's-
one and a
it's-
quarter.
you gotta look
That's the
at
way
it.
You gotta look at it.
That's the way we present it, yeah, so what I'm saying is.
You didn't present it in your sheet that you sent us in that way. You omitted that.
Yeah, I just wanted to look at percentage
Percentage,
changes of
right, the positive
populations.
and the negative.
Yeah,
That was helpful. I appreciate.
I'm
that.
glad that it was. I just wanted
Yeah.
to share it with everybody for that. So I had a question based on that.
Yes,
So clearly, if you look at, and I wish, I hope that everybody's seen that, but it seems as though instructional assistance has been the largest increase in our district, which would make sense with what you're saying. What is the cost of that to us? You know, I understand that they are not a equivalent salary of a teacher, but we've increased by, I believe, close to 60% in our district.
And
instructional assistants.
also realize that some of these individuals aren't all full-time people, too. So, you know.
Well, they don't qualify for health benefits. You know, they might be under like 29 hours a week.
If they're part-time.
If they're
yeah,
part-time.
If they're full-time. Yeah. I mean, salaries for an aide, depending on their, mid-20s or starting aide. That sometimes the benefit package is more than that.
It is, 100%.
In some cases, that's. why it's.
And then the only thing that looked like an outlier to me, and not looking to micromanage the administration, it just was very surprising to me.
You know what I always
Anytime-
say when you say that.
What do
to
they
me,
say?
John?
What do they say? Anything before a but, is
Yeah.
a lie, right? So, but, how did we jump from 2 secretaries in OTES to 4? Is there a reason for that? I would assume that there is.
It probably stems from supervisor secretary. So,
Okay.
Yeah,
so,
that's what we
are there,
said.
if there's two, there are 2 secretaries in the main office. But there are supervisors who get housed at different buildings. So where they get housed, they're secretarial, and quite often they're not full-time. So for example, you've got supervisors, there's one secretary who jumps between Dow Avenue and Wanamassa and works part of the time at Wanamassa. That's what I mean. When you look at this stuff, it doesn't always tell. I mean, it gives you a good overview, but it doesn't always tell the exact.
So it's safe to
It
assume.
went to 100%.
Right, yeah.
because
Yeah,
they're
I'm
not
like,
on-
oh.
Oh,
But so it's safe to, so what you're saying is that there's possibility that there is an individual at that school who's not necessarily assigned to solely the
Like,
population.
we
of
have
that
to give
school.
everybody a home.
Right, so they just happen
So
to
their
be
home could be there.
on that
but they
table
are-
organization.
Other than the 2 main office secretaries. Anybody else is probably being shared between a number of supervisors.
Okay,
And are not necessarily always housed at that particular school. But that's considered their home school.
then my last question is, are there any state requirements on, like there are for pre-K students with what we have with our special education students and their pupil to teacher ratio?
Yeah, depending on the class, there's caps that are put on. Sometimes it's 12, sometimes it's, 6. It depends on the classification and depends primarily on the classification. But yes, there are caps that most of those, if it's self-contained classes, they're usually kept to a smaller class size. Usually the most would be 12. And honestly, sometimes we try to keep them even lower than 12. Because 1, you could have kids who have to be added in. 2, they sometimes are, for most vulnerable populations. Now, that being said, we've probably kept, in the last couple of years, we've probably kept some of those class sizes through COVID smaller than they. So I think what we're seeing now is we have some room to increase some of those class sizes, not to the max, but closer to the max than we did.
Or in this teachers here, for example, oh, I'm looking at John's actually. So are we
I
including?
don't have to-
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to blindside you. I can forward this over to you guys so you can,
He just did,
poke
he
holes
just
in it.
did like. a
too, if
different-
there's something
different-
wrong with it.
Or not different. He just laid it out differently. What percentage of our teachers versus admin versus frankly secretaries and instructional assistants are part-time though? Is there a way to find that out?
The majority of our part-time folks are falling in the teaching ranks, but we don't have a ton of part-time people. We've actually been sort of cutting back.
But part-time people don't get benefits as you said, right? So
Anybody who got them prior to, if they were part-time over 25 hours, if we had some people who were part-time over 25 hours, they were grandfathered in as part of the last contract negotiation. Now it's 29, now it's 30 hours actually. But if anybody was under 25 hours, under this old contract
Mhm.
language, 30 hours under the newest contract language, then no, they're not.
I just forwarded it to you. It's just like a heat map to show percentage changes.
Any other
Okay.
questions about it?
do you know how we?
Yes, Alex?
Do you know how, I wasn't done, sorry. Do you know how as a district, we fare with other districts of our size
In
in terms of our enrollment down? 25% of making, estimating, and our teacher or staffing down 12.
John, is your hand up?
No, I'm scratching the back of my head. Sorry.
Right.
Is there an answer?
The capital budget, did you want to come?
The capital budget is just 40,000 that we took out for the vehicle. The next one that's new is the curriculum. So if you could open up the curriculum.
Thank you to your staff for getting those to me first.
Hmm?
Thank you to your staff for getting.
Yeah,
those to
yeah.
me first.
All right, so what we wanted to do was show what we're proposing in the budget for this year for curriculum updates. And what we did was we broke it up, subtotal of gen ed investments, subtotal of special ed. Okay, so in our general fund, we're going to be paying $133,797 for additional curriculum updates or upgrades. And then in ARP3, we're putting in the IXL math, ELA and science of 25,000. That in the next year's budget, that needs to be absorbed going into our general fund.
But we're getting that money back.
We're getting this money out of ARP. It's not in our general fund, correct?
Yeah, just a reminder that, the ARP is good through next year, so, anything that is that we're paying for in the ARP, depending if it's long-term, we'll need to come back. So that's why we really try to limit long-term expenses in the
Right.
grant.
So what
because-
you ordered from math, ELA and science, that will be long-term, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, those are recurring expenses, but it's $25,000, $25,000, but it's not a small amount. In an
In the scheme.
$80 million budget, it's that's not as hard to bring back into the general fund as some other things. But,
Right.
What we looked for are places where we could still utilize the grant to help.
That's what we wrote in the
Yeah,
grant.
exactly.
So when you apply for the grant, you do put what
Yeah,
specifically you're gonna use it for. So this was part of a use that we had.
Yes, that,
IXL, so is that when you say recurring, is that every year? Because it's an online program, we have to pay to upgrade it every year.
Or at least whatever the term might be.
And this covers K through 12?
Yeah, it should.
Yes.
Okay.
Ms. Weldon is shaking her head, yes. So-
Ms. Weldon, thank you. More curriculum questions. Grace Ann.
I just want to know, how do kids
whatever.
access the financial support for class trips? Like, what's the process for that?
Are you talking
What's that,
about
I'm
the
sorry?
curriculum?
Yeah, it says general fund,
Oh.
financial support for class trips.
Well, some class trips
Well,
are, we do, right?
Yeah,
We put it in the budget.
there are class trips that if they're part of the curriculum, not like
Like
a
the
club
Trenton
or
fourth
something
grade.
like that,
Okay.
then we would fund those. Or a good, at least a good portion of it, transportation, whatever.
But that line isn't for kids that maybe need help paying for.
No, that would typically come out of like a student activities account, every year. You know, money might go into student activities for, gets their variety of different reasons, paying off this, paying off that. Sometimes kids go on, sometimes kids pay for a trip and then they don't wind up going. And, they back out last second, so, we keep that in sort of like a general fund to help pay for kids who can't afford it.
Or if they couldn't afford it, how would they access that account? Like they would let their teacher
They,
know, like,
they let, typically they would. Either the teacher.
Or the guidance or
administration, Counsel.
Can we move to maintenance?
This is just joining another cooperative purchasing agreement. And it's predominantly for maintenance, supplies such as doors, things like that. So that they've already gone out to bid and, we want to accept, being part of this going forward. Mostly this is gonna do the $80,000 of doors, that we're dealing with in the high
Was that
school.
like
for
one
next year.
door? Was that
Yeah,
one
well,
door?
Chris's one door 30 is like $28,000.
So don't mess with door 30 out there.
It would have locks, it's a security
Yeah.
outside
Wow,
door.
they gotta have at least 30 doors.
That's the thing.
what
Automatically.
the
lock.
there's three.
Oh, yes.
But it costs that much.
Any other questions on finance management?
So stay tuned on the budget. You know what our revenue numbers is.
I have one more curriculum.
Yes, now,
So this 159,000 is, that's it?
That's it. No, that's the ads. We have our curriculum base in our, this is new. This is correct.
Gotcha, okay.
yeah, that would be a low number.
I know.
Yeah.
We decided we're not gonna. go with each
No
other.
curriculum. Instruction, education and
Sorry,
student.
I just have one
I'm
final,
sorry,
I
yes.
apologize, one final question, because you said we're moving forward to budget, so. Are we still trending on this 2.97%
Yeah,
move?
moving in that direction. We're operating based on the direction we received last meeting, that that's where we are. Once again, we can go lower than issue costs, but I'm questioning.
Double the amount. Easily.
So my only reservation, right, nobody wants to be the one to say this, but I believe that it would not be in accordance with what I've said previously is. I just need to understand what we're looking at cuts wise of positions before I say that I'm gonna agree to a 2.97% increase in the budget. I think that is what's required.
We'll
We're gonna
let
have
you
to
know
learn at
what
the center.
positions. what we're talking about.
And the reason I'm bringing this up now is I don't want to get to a point in the budget where. We're at the finish line and you're looking at us like, okay, you guys gonna approve this. And I am not in agreement that we are doing enough to make this district.
Yeah, if I'm-
Soluble
if
for
I'm
the
not
future.
mistaken, right now, we're probably looking at over 20 positions.
And that's
a
with
lot.
the 2.97%
Yeah.
increase.
That's a lot.
Before it was 10 to 15, I thought, for the 2.9.
It's
So
over.
now we've gone up to over 20.
I think no, we were 10 to 15 to get to that.
Right. We had cuts
Yeah.
already done.
Yeah.
How many positions,
More.
In
yeah.
addition.
how many
We
positions?
have made 10 to 15 cuts just to get to where 2.9% would go.
What we're doing tomorrow, just to let you know, we have roughly what we think it's gonna be, okay? And we are working to close the gap. But what we're gonna do as a team tomorrow with the principals and the central office staff is we're gonna sit down to say how many of the retirements that have come in do we really not need to backfill? Because that'll adjust the amount of, right?
And that's what
That'll
we always
adjust the
try to
amount of
do.
people that we actually have to.
Right, those over 20 may not equate to 20 some odd people, because we work very hard to not
To
backfill
not do that.
positions, what have you.
Good.
But, there's no
So just a
there's no
position.
way it will impact people.
It's definitely.
So our other option 2 was a 2.5% increase in the budget. How many positions are we looking at cutting if we go down to that option?
What was that in money?
That was an additional, what was
Is
it?
that 500,000?
Would you say 60 to 80K per person, right? So that's an additional
12?
12 positions, so we'd be at 32 positions to
And
get
like I
down to
said,
that.
Okay,
County
yeah,
office-
that would be more than that.
It would be more than
We're
32
gonna be over
positions.
20.
So,
It's gonna be
so,
closer to 25.
so the county office, I just want to bring back the conversation that we had. county office is telling us that if we don't use our bank app, we don't use the healthcare waiver, okay? The issue that we are gonna have when we are applying for grants, and I'm doing a green grant tomorrow, anything that's out there, I'm trying to get
Stabilization aid.
stabilization, it will not be looked at favorably.
We
They're
look
saying
too
you
wealthy
didn't
with money
use-
in the bank.
Exactly.
They're gonna say you didn't use all of it.
Or you didn't use what was afforded of you, and why should the state
Why
give
should they
you
give
when
you
you're
more?
not asking your
You put it to
taxpayers to put the
yourself.
same amount of burden?
The thing that I don't understand, so we have to, in order to use these items, the bank cap, and what was the other item?
It's a healthcare waiver.
The healthcare waiver.
Went up by 15.1%.
Why does that have to be tied to a 2.97% increase in the budget?
Because when you use it, that's what it equates to. So it's a million, it's like nine.
So the
bank
increase is
cap-
not,
I'm sorry, John, the bank cap and the waivers
Go away.
allow you to go over 2%
I'll take it.
without having to go to.
I understand that, but our option 2 also allowed us to go over 2% without having to vote, correct?
Correct. They all, it was a sliding scale of what we
What-
Oh, I
needed.
said I feel like a ping pong. I keep going.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry.
No, it's all right.
Yes.
But, so this is what, because I wanna know. I wanna know if when the people of this town question us on when we approve this,
Mhm.
am I telling them the truth when I tell them that increase, the delta, is not necessarily an increase in their paid taxes. That increase is also an increase that's due to the bank cap and
No.
the healthcare
The
waiver.
bank cap is something that was from savings of you not taking 2% in the past.
I understand that.
Okay, the healthcare,
And
with
it's
all
the-
of this
it's the tax
impacts
levy.
your tax
Tax
levy.
Tax levy.
It does.
We didn't,
Yes.
instead of taking it in 2018, we did 1.5% in 2018.
Right.
We
So it
banked
was
five,
banked.
we banked our right to have another 0.5% of taxes. And we're now going to
money that's
call it in.
There isn't, bank cap isn't,
It's
it
not
isn't
money in the bank.
Not
a savings
literally,
account that we're
Yeah.
accessing.
It's just we can go up to 2%, we didn't go up to 2%, so that money for a 3-year period of time sits there. And you can access it.
And then you lose it.
So if we don't, and to be clear on what I'm getting, I apologize, and I appreciate the board. So if I don't raise my citizens' taxes as much as possible, when I go back to the government and ask them for more money in the future, they may tell me no.
I don't think we're raising it as much as possible. It doesn't equate to everybody in town having to pay. Additional taxes, because believe me, that is not something that I want to see occur also. But on the years that I've been in the board and we haven't gone to 2%. If we don't use that cap now, then we're not being fiscally responsible. And that's what we need to tell people. and-
You can sort of limit yourself by not going to 2%. It was set up to kind of go to 2%. That was when the law was created. I think it was designed to do that. The bank cap was put in place to give you even sort of that 3-year, like, you sure you don't want to go do it? Because, you're actually limiting yourself in future budgets. Because remember, you can raise 2% on the tax levy. So if you don't take the full tax 2%, that amount the year in following year is less. It's 2% of a lesser amount than you would have if you had taken the full 2%. So it's sort of a catch-22.
I do just worry, and I hope that maybe somebody here on the board can explain to me, right, or talk, we're here to make decisions together. I worry that we're splitting the baby. I worry that we either are going to say, oh, we'll go to the 2.97% now, then we limit the cuts of jobs to the district, right? And I would love to be told why I'm incorrect in that. And next year, we're in the same boat. Hey, we need to cut more jobs. And maybe somebody could tell me, is there some solution here where it's like we rip the Band-Aid off right now and we prevent ourselves from having to be here next year and the year after? No.
With enrollment going down.
But we,
That's the bigger issue.
So with enrollment going
Well,
down
when
and
it's-
our
when it's-
funding
when you
decreasing.
say yes
Do
to-
more cuts now, so we don't have to revisit this every year. I think that's what you're saying.
That is what I'm saying,
Yeah, I think-
right?
I think, and
Like, I don't wanna go,
see that
think about it, you're gonna have
I
two
think when-
populations in this town, right? You're gonna have the people that they don't wanna see anything. And you're gonna have the people that are gonna say, I want to limit the amount of jobs that we take away from citizens in this town. How dare you do this at a time when inflation is record high? We have all these other issues, right? So my thought is, we've gotta figure one out You know,
Well,
we
can
can,
wait though, John, until we see our numbers?
absolutely,
Well,
yeah, no, I'm
honestly,
just trying
while-
to say.
while we're still in the S2. While we're still in the S2 cuts over the next couple of years. You know, this is where we're gonna be. But the good thing is we've kind of gotten to that point now where the cuts, even though still significant, talking about the state aid cut. We've now gone over the hump of probably the highest cuts, and we'll start to.
I thought next year was the highest cut.
No, next year's lower.
Next year's
We're
lower.
gonna be going down.
Yeah, it's like
And maybe we'll get some more
So,
stabilization aid.
you know, You know, the problem is we don't know about stabilization until well into the year, right? So you can't budget for it.
But stabilization is
So-
for one-time charges,
Exactly,
right?
right.
So think of it. And what
Not
it'll
for
help us
staffing.
is for
No, you
buses.
can't use it.
It'll help, not
So,
staffing.
you know, I think, I hear what you're saying, but, you know. This is really, I mean, we're gonna, it's gonna be a big chunk right now. There's Band-Aids are being ripped, you know, I mean, this is gonna be probably the biggest hurt in terms of staffing cuts that we've had in quite a long time.
Yes, Alex.
From what I heard from the last meeting as well, it looks like we're headed to a referendum like next year
Probably
right?
not next year.
or the year after.
Yes.
Okay. For
Next year, I'm looking to do an ESIP, which is an energy savings
Oh, yeah.
project, which
Okay.
we
Mhm.
get, and I'm
You'll
doing
get
a
money
ROD
back.
grant,
so
which we get back 60% from the state.
Then we're gonna do an acronym break.
Yeah, I know.
is there, I don't know how referendums work because I wasn't on the board, the last one we did. So if the 2% or so raised the average homeowner in Ocean Townships, like $155 it was last year or something. So now we're going to 3%, so I'm ballparking $175. I don't know, for your average 500 in house. In a referendum, like if he's even entertaining, like, well, let's have one idea of 50 cuts, don't kill me. But that he's saying like that could be an option. Is there an option for a quicker referendum? Because, and how much would that be? Is that gonna be $400 for everybody?
Your referendums are typically bonded and then they're spread out over
Yeah.
20 years typically, and that goes into your debt service.
No, but for the homeowner, like how much is the
It
homeowner?
would depend on how big, it would depend on, like, we have debt service coming off this year, right? So that's actually helping us. That's helping us get to the 297%. We've been higher than 297% in that debt service coming. Traditionally, and Tina's mentioned this, I think what you like to try to do is you like to try to keep your debt service relatively flat from year to year to year to year. So often districts will do these referendums when some debt service is coming off, like in some ways, doing one this year would have not been the worst idea, because we have debt service coming off next year, and to add debt service, it keeps it flat, right? So it's something that's kind of, it's almost like it's like your food bill, right? It's like it's there, you know you have to spend it, and you know you have to put or like your energy bill or whatever,
Yeah.
something that's constant.
Is that
Right.
something that is a referendum, something that can happen this year or next year, no matter what we
You gotta
if
get
we want
bond
to?
counsel, you gotta do financing, you gotta determine the
So it's
project.
like a year-long
These
process
are
to
big,
do.
these are big ticket items, like you would do the rest of the 3 roofs, you would do all the stadium lighting, you would do.
But if
it's
we knew,
millions and millions of dollars.
but if we knew we were going to do that, can't we, like, what if you can get extra to save some of these salaries or something? Like, wouldn't that be part of the plan if we're asking for a bond referendum for $10 million because that'll do all these capital improvements? Well, what about a bond referendum for 11 million so that we save some jobs?
You can't.
Yeah, they don't
You
tax it
can't really- you can't.
So
for salaries. you
no
can't-
matter what you
Okay.
borrow, you have to pay back.
No, yeah.
So you can't put
Okay.
salaries into a referendum, right?
Okay.
You have to put like projects.
So it's not
Right.
project. Okay.
Yes, Grace, yeah.
I just have one question. So I was looking up agenda minutes from last budget, just to kind of, my recollection. And to John's point, because one of the bullet points from last March 2022 was that we were going to consolidate enrollment numbers with staffing cuts. So what cuts did we make last year? And if we didn't, are they also being considered this year?
Back in
We cut the
March.
French program, we did a whole bunch, we'd have to go back.
No, I'll tell you when it is.
Okay.
In the month of March, you will see the personnel cuts that we made. There was a personnel slide and what we cut is in there. But most of it was through retirement.
Your retirement.
Yes, it was quite a.
That's where most of our
Yeah.
cuts.
This
have
year,
come
that's
from.
not gonna be the
Okay,
case.
so we're not making double cuts this year because we didn't make
No,
enough last
but
year.
you
Okay,
lost
that's
another
what I'm
80 kids,
asking.
too.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Well,
800 over
No,
10
let me,
years.
as I've said, you know, the last couple of years, so many years, probably the last 4 or 5 years, we made most of our cuts through attrition. And we absolutely made a conscious decision. If we didn't get all of the COVID related grants, we would have absolutely made a number of the cuts we are going to have to make this year. We would have made over the last 3 years. Because we would have had no choice. That grant money definitely enabled us, and part of that was absolutely of the mind that, to your point, John, about high inflation and this and that, you know, cutting people during a global pandemic when health benefits are so important to people and all these things are so important. So we tried very hard to make those cuts through attrition as much as possible and not cut as many people. And we were very, you know, we were successful in doing that. If you want to call that being successful, right? I mean, you might look at that as maybe that wasn't ultimately in the best interest of the district long term, but it was a decision that we made. And so now we're kind of to that point where we, you know, those grant fundings, that grant fund is going to end. And you know, we can't maintain it.
Amy,
I was just gonna say, being here for 9 years, I can say that I think that we've always been conscious. And, I can remember 5 or 6 years ago when we cut out a section of the fifth grade or something, cut up like a pod because the enrollment was going down in teen. Thank you. But we've definitely gone, as Jim's saying, it has been through attrition, but it has been looked at. And he could probably tell you just from knowing, because they don't just look at this year. And I felt that way with people, especially. I felt that we've learned, like we've thought about this, they've thought about this more than us, right? Because they know better who we need to, what we can do and what we can't do. But it's usually a long range plan of what they know. Okay, well, if this number keeps going down, then maybe we need to get to cut a history teacher, and there's always been a lot of thought about it. There's been movement of teachers from one building to another, which they haven't always loved, but because they're being fiscally responsible, we're moving staff so that we don't cut a job, but we, cover the way it needs to be covered. So I just want to, I'm just saying, I just want to make the comment that when it comes to people, I have felt in the 9 budgets I've done that we've done a very good, meaning central administration principals, have done a very good job of balancing it to a point that they can do.
thank you. We're gonna move to personnel.
We did.
Is that all right?
I have a quick question.
We have instruction.
And Tina, I can send you the district later, but without giving it up. But so a parent who lives in this town and works in another district says the Board of Ed in that district authorized a $1,000 early retirement announcement bonus.
Yeah, we do.
You can't do that. We have an incentive for sick days. You can't give somebody a bonus to retire.
Well, maybe they don't use the word bonus, but it was presented to me as if the teachers who are planning to retire tell their district by March 5th, because they're in the middle of budget, so they want to know now, not July or June, that there will be a bonus. So is that,
Well, but by February
or a
15th,
stipend by March
But-
5th?
I'm saying for us, by
Yeah.
February 15th, we increase the amount of payout in the.
Yeah, I mean,
That's our insert.
So
That translates to decent money, like.
the majority of our retirees tell us before. But the purpose is to know, so you can budget for it.
Okay, all right, sorry.
All right,
So-
back to instruction. I'm sorry, we didn't finish that. We were at the school suspension.
So,
Yes.
so just
Tawana.
2%,
Any discussion on 8.1 through 8.7?
or 1 week.
When we discussed.
Hearing none, moving on.
Right.
Yeah. I know.
Yep, okay.
Yeah, the calendar.
I'm good.
Just to point out, I don't know if you received the email about the Muslim holiday Eid. And spoke with Dr. Stefankowitz about it, but rather than putting it on the calendar, our equity coach in the high school notifies staff members should a holiday like I come up so that teachers are aware, or Ramadan, students are fasting. And that's how our district is handling that, and Dr. Stefanowitz is going to reply to that
Yeah.
email. Anything else? The youth art month, you're going to make that presentation of the.
Yeah, it's just, we usually just designate March as youth art month, and the date, the district usually has the art show at the library. I'll make sure you know, it's not really listed on here. It's a great.
It is. It's great.
So I encourage everybody to come and check that out.
Anything else in instruction? Yes.
I have a question on the holiday. So I know a number of smaller districts are implementing the holiday, Fanwood, Metuchen. I just know that from personal contacts. Is there?
Which holiday?
I don't know if I'm saying- am I saying it
I
correctly?
don't know if I'm saying it right. Maybe it is Eve. I hope I'm not mispronouncing.
So we're not entertaining putting that on the calendar at this time, is that what?
Not pretty much.
Is it because we don't have a large population of students that celebrate, or what, like, what's the reason?
Well, I think right now, we still, that number is still overall relatively small compared to others. I mean, you know, when you start getting into the religious and cultural holidays, there are so many that, you know, you really have to try to make a call. I mean,
Yeah, I'm just
it
curious.
would be
I'm not,
very difficult.
I haven't thought it through enough either way, but I'm just curious what you're thinking.
It's still relatively low.
You were correct. It is Eid. Thank you. Yes.
So
Sean?
what is the formula that you use to determine which religious holidays are observed?
I think we look at the population of the students first and foremost, and then we also look at population staff as well, because obviously, if you have a holiday, we want our staff members, we can take those days. Difficult to operate the school district, so we look at those two things. Right?
So what's the percentage of the population for Jewish holidays versus Muslim holidays?
I mean, I don't have it off the top of my head, but we certainly. We believe. It's hard to know exactly how everybody. How they worship or what religion they go by. But, you know, based on the feedback we've gotten, I guess over the years, we've tried to remove certain holidays. You know, we certainly get it. But that's, I mean, I don't know the exact percentage. What we do know is when we look at who takes certain days off, in other words, days that we don't have off, right? And but kids take them off and claim the religious holiday that they're taking. We know that the number of students who take off for Muslim holidays is very low. The number of students who take off for Jewish holidays is still relatively low compared to, say, if it was Christmas, for example, which is we're off and it's a national holiday. But it's probably at least 4 to 5 times higher.
So if there were 5 students who take off for a Muslim holiday, roughly 100 students take off for a Jewish holiday, if you had to use round numbers.
I mean, you know, it also depends on the holiday. There are some holidays that are more, you know, important within that particular religion than others, you know. There are certain times of the year when a fairly large part of our Jewish population takes some of those days off.
I know it depends on area also, because there are some where you may have Indian or Asian
Right.
observant.
Yeah, and like, for example,
Religious
up in the
observances.
Edison area in Island, there's a lot of Hindi holidays that are starting to be taken. It's got to be looked at. I mean, you know, as we continue to become a more, you know, diverse community, it certainly has to be taken into consideration. But it's very difficult because you really start getting into, you know, I mean, you know, working in a school district, everybody wants to start as late as possible and get out as early as possible and have as many days off in between. But you still have a 180-day requirement. You get that in and still, you know, I mean, You know,
Yeah,
if I,
I'm just curious if there was
Yeah.
a formula for.
no,
example,
not an
that
exact
you-
formula. I think we just kind of take a look
Right,
at
We're gonna
at
take
the
two more
population.
questions, then we're heading down.
Wait,
Yes.
Sam was first.
Yeah, my question is,
sorry.
I know years ago, Mr. Klinger's class did data, stuff like that with calendar. I was just wondering if he's still doing it.
I don't believe it's that.
I have
So that's what you were gonna ask?
Can we,
Mr. Klinger?
can we do a survey?
He was one of the teachers.
There's amount of polling or how do you class?
Not polling.
But can we
It
just,
was just an assignment for 1 year.
you know?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, it's certainly, I think as the years probably move forward, yeah, I mean, I think it's probably a good idea. Once again, I think we gotta just be, you know, it's tough. I mean, if you asked me, right, you know, and maybe it's safe for me to say this now at this point in my career, I think almost every religious or cultural holiday shouldn't be taken off. We should stick to those that are, you know, legal national holidays. Because and the reason why I say that is because as we become more and more diverse and more and more religions are, you know, are celebrated, it's, you know, like, how do you pick and choose? It becomes very difficult. And so you get into this almost all or nothing sort
No,
of
that's
thing.
why I was saying, like, if you had a formula
Yeah.
again is fair. So no matter if it's 20% of staff or if it's 5% of staff.
Yeah.
Then you at least have a measure, but right now it's based upon if you get backlash on removing something.
No,
Yeah,
that's not solely that. I mean, it's not solely that. We do
Well,
look at, you know, like I said, we look at how
number.
many kids take days, you know, that are not days closed, and we look at how many students fall into that. You know, the Jewish population is absolutely a percentage. I mean, is it, you know, is it 50%? No, is it 90%? No, is it 30%?
No, I'm just curious.
But it's of the other, you know, of the religious groups outside of Christian, which tends to be predominant in this area, I believe. The Jewish one, faith is definitely the one that is most observed. And, you know, Muslim is up and coming, no doubt about it, but it's still overall, you know, pretty small.
All right, we did our personnel policy. We will discuss the.
Any
second
questions on the
readings?
second
Is
reading?
there any questions on the second reading of the policy attendance or student records?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, the old business. Yes,
Just where are we with the request to the attorney for our legal opinion?
The advisory opinion?
Yeah. Have we finalized that? or-
We haven't yet, no. I mean, there was a lot going on, with the vote recount, the budget.
and I read it in the school board notes, the advisory opinions, they're trying to limit them. And they're hoping that districts can go to, there's a certain question and answer that they've expanded. And they're hoping that your questions and answers, you can find the answers to your questions on that site. But we certainly could continue with that if the board so requests.
Yeah, I just thought that we were directed to do
We
that.
are, and
And
then
so
that
I
was
just,
out.
no, yeah, but we all have things that we missed because of
Priorities, right?
clearly.
Old
But
business.
so wait, are we gonna
Oh,
put a date on when we're gonna get this done by, or? As a
Yeah,
board,
by
do we have a
next time.
desire?
But we still have to meet then after.
I think we have to have a policy
Right.
committee meeting
Correct.
before we can come back to the board.
Right,
Within a month, I don't know. You wanna put it-
a month is good.
Okay.
Alex? We're still in old, right?
Yes.
How are the parent academy sessions going? No, what, last week we had the pre-K one,
Yeah, I think they're going well. I mean, you know, the attendance has been still, you know, I wouldn't put it into the, you know, stratosphere category, but, you know, I think it's building and it'll take a little bit of time to catch on, but, you know, it's like anything. I think if you kind of relate to that topic and feel like that's a topic you want to find out more about, you attend and
Yeah.
I want to say, I mean, our preschool, I mean, there were two different ones. We had our preschool information session that was outside of the parent. That was, you know, that was very well attended. And I think Ms. Hanson said it was maybe in the 20s, you know, the last one,
but
which.
so
you
we're
know,
keeping number tracks, right?
Yeah,
Each
she's
one.
keeping track of everything. Yeah, I mean, it's overall, I'd say it's been light-ish, but I think it's growing, you
Okay.
know, and I think we continue to do that. It'll be,
Love to hear the final numbers when she has a lot of them.
yeah.
That's great.
Better attendance on our board meetings.
New business?
I just had one quick new business. So I attended the Department of Education's ARP roundtable last week. And they went over the MOESC virtual school. Have we, for those of you who don't know, MOESC has like an entire curriculum of virtual school. And so like credit recovery, and even like if we don't have a Spanish teacher, we could contract them for a Spanish teacher. That's significant savings. And a lot of districts, they said, are using this because of budget issues. Is that something that we have explored?
Yeah, we look at that if it's a viable option. Sometimes though, it's not, you have to look at the times. It's not always available at the time that, that I want to have it. But yeah, we also work like with world language, we work with Middlebury. So that's a good organization. That we work with. But yeah, we do think about that. Find it, but it's tough because, we all determined the virtual school thing is not really that ideal for everybody. But
Yeah.
in a certain situation, yeah, we look at it.
Let's say there's a history teacher that retires, they taught fundamentals of American history, I don't know. And that salary was 80 grand, but if we contract with virtual schooling for $36,000 for the 20 kids that are in that one class, like there's a 50 grand savings right there. So, I mean, have we gone to them seriously about some plugins of where we might have gaps in retirements?
You would want kids, I mean, because you're still
Nothing
having.
is ideal,
Right,
but
but you're
we're
still,
looking at
but in
30.
that situation, when you're saying 20 kids, I would say. Have to have staff to cover it.
I that would not be our first choice.
Okay.
That would not be our first choice. I think we would look at that or, it lasts. I don't know if I'd quite say last resort, but certainly if we were running out of options, we might look at that type of situation. Like I said, we have kids right now who may want to take Arabic, who may want to take German, whatever.
Japanese
And we do for when it's a large group of, if it's a couple of students, that works. If you were talking about a student who was on home instruction, if you were talking about that kind of situation, that's viable for virtual school.
Okay.
When you're talking about classes of kids 20 plus, it becomes more difficult. And so is it a possibility? Yes. Is it really up there? Not really for that scenario.
Okay, but good to know that we're.
All right, we're gonna move to public comment. Ms. Conway, would anyone from the public like to comment on any item at this time?
Madam President, there are no commenters online.
I'm sorry, I didn't- Okay, well, there's one in the audience here, certainly. Hi.
Hello,
Hi.
I'm Dave Stoniger, live at 6 Derby Lane, Wayside. I have a question and a comment.
Okay.
Would the board consider explaining each topic being voted on, posted in numeric format, so the public has a better understanding of what is being voted on? Because I've noticed when the members vote, it's just like 8 point something, and then you go yes, no, you kind of like roll right through it real quick. And I think as a parent and people who are at the meeting or watching it on Zoom kind of get lost in the numbers and trying to follow what
Follow the
exactly
agenda.
as
Well,
far
when
as
we
like,
go downstairs and when we do the vote, each person is called on individually. Is that what you mean?
yeah, but also it would be like the subject matter too. Like sometimes it would be like member so-and-so would be like 8 point something, okay. 8 point, whatever, I'm just throwing numbers
Sure,
like
yes.
it'd be like you wouldn't know what it is that you weren't actually following on board docs.
I mean, I think he's saying, I don't want to speak, but I think he's saying how we used to read them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're doing that in a work session, so that's why it's important for the parents to come to the work sessions. We go over every single agenda item and talk questions and
And the regular
then
meetings.
regular meetings, we just vote.
Then it just goes through.
Yeah, so it's like if you weren't, I'm just trying to like, if you weren't at
At
the
the
work
work.
meeting. I understand it's a lot, I was just trying to figure out.
We have, I'm glad that you clarified that because we did
Being
make
to
that
multiple
change.
meetings, I kind of get, like,
Are
if
there
you miss
copies
one or
of
you
the
weren't at the
adjustments?
work meeting, you come to
You're right, Dave. We
the
did
regular
change
meeting, you
that.
kind of get lost on
You
what's
do,
going on.
because then it just sounds like we're voting, 8.1 or 9.1,
Yeah,
9.12 without having reviewed and
Yeah,
discussed.
we do
I know it
dual
might add a little
screens?
more time to the meeting.
I'm sorry?
Can we do dual screens when the information is, because I thought
Ms. Conway shows it on the screen, so, but she
does.
scrolls, so instead of scrolling, can she split screen?
Certainly ask her. If that might be more helpful, that's.
I don't know if it's a MacBook, because if it's a MacBook, you can easily split the screen and
I don't know.
So you split the screen like
so instead of
Yeah.
scrolling.
It's the agenda, the full agenda is on.
an agenda?
I just go off my phone on the board docs.
It's downstairs. We keep agendas in the back of the.
Oh, there's.
Can we
okay.
bring some up here?
You have a comment?
Yes. I think my comment is to enhance communication within the community, which is one of the goals being set forward. I'd like to see a summary report in layman's terms, which we could possibly use the high school student reps, maybe just a thought. That would, they could write a review of the meetings and let you know, like early accessible to those who aren't on social media, which I'm not. So I don't know if there's more information out there on social media, which I don't know. I was just.
You mean in addition to? the-
Yeah, like a summary of the meetings, like maybe like a
something
quick like synopsis, like, hey, so and so, this, that, and the other thing, kind of layman's terms more than the board docs, which I
Yes.
find is a little vague and hard to understand.
Mhm.
And I was just throwing that out there. That was something.
We were doing that for a while and perhaps we've been remiss in not keeping up with it, but definitely something that we'll address.
Yeah, I mean, I have two kids, one's gonna be in the kindergarten now, so I'm kind of just like getting into it. Figuring out what's going on. So it's not-
Anything's coming.
We weren't gonna do them anymore.
And your comments too.
Because there's a lot of parents that I talked to in town, you know, they're like, oh, you know, meetings or this, but I'm thinking like maybe like something like short paragraph. Okay, this is what happened at the work meeting, this happened at the regular meeting, maybe on the district website, something easy for parents to know, okay, and then it's just. keep moving. So, Thank you.
Very much.
Are you staying right now?
Are there
Yeah.
other?
Madam President, we do have another commenter. Erica Polk is on virtual. Please go ahead, Erica Polk.
Yes, Erica. I see.
Please go ahead, Erica.
Yeah,
We will, Ms. Conway, if we can't get Erica on now, we will have another public comment session later on, and we need to go down to.
Very good, very good. Thank you.
Second.